Good morning, Bimblers. And you join me where we left off in the last episode, by these two bridges here in Widnes. We've rode here to Widnes this morning from Warrington. That's for two reasons. One, the trains don't start until 10 o'clock on Sundays. It's a Sunday today. And the second reason is, we've blown the Bimblism budget for this month. We had to buy a new tripod and a new microphone. So that's 70 quid down the Swanee. So we thought, we'll save some money and we'll ride here to Widnes, down National Cycle Route 62, to do a detour off National Cycle Route 62 to Runcorn Old Town. So let's stop messing about and let's bimble.
Things to show me, but life just keeps turning back to the way things were before. Oh, knew this time you would still see all that became attached from the way things were before.
This is the end of the Runcorn extension of the Bridgewater Canal. The original Bridgewater Canal was dug in 1761 between Manchester and Worsley, and it was all the idea of the Duke of Bridgewater, Francis Egerton. He had a large coal mine in Worsley. Worsley's in between Manchester and Leigh. He had troubles getting his coal into Manchester so that he could sell it. In those days they had to send it via pack horse or via boats down the River Irwell, which was tidal at the time. So it wasn't always easy for the Duke to get his coal into Manchester. But he'd heard about a canal in France called the Canal de Midi. In fact, at the time, it would have been called the Canal Royal en Languedoc. That was before the French Revolution, when they got rid of the royal family, hence the royal bit in the title. Mr. Egerton thought it was just the ticket, the thing he needed to get his coal to market. So he got his estate manager, John Gilbert, to draw up some plans, and he enlisted the help of a friend of the channel, James Brinley. He'd proved that he could move water around by getting all the water out of the wet earth colliery near Bolton. And he got the water out of that colliery using the power of the River Irwell. He used the water that was seeping into the mine to get the water out of the mine. Clever chap. The canal was so successful that the price of the coal coming out of Francis Egerton's coal mine dropped by 50%, which seems like a bad thing, but it made him the cheapest coal around. It made it so more people could afford to buy coal, which meant that he sold more sacks of coal. So he ended up making more money. And to make him even more money, he thought that he should link his canal to the River Mersey, hence linking himself to Liverpool and the Irish Sea. And that's why they built the Runcorn extension of the Bridgewater Canal. It was to get into the River Mersey. It doesn't do that anymore. It used to carry on underneath Waterloo Bridge and into the River Mersey. That would be the Manchester Ship Canal these days, because they built that in between. There's apparently plans to reopen that section and get canal boats into the Manchester Ship Canal and then into the Weaver Navigation. Incidentally, the pub to the side of the Bridgewater Canal here in Runcorn is where the sitcom 2 Pints of Lager and a Packet of Crisps was supposed to be set. Do you remember that on BBC Three in the early noughties? In the programme it was called The Archer, but way back when it would have been called the Waterloo Hotel. These days it's called Wat Phra Singh UK, and it's a Buddhist temple. You know the theme tune from 2 Pints of Lager and a Packet of Crisps, where he sings, "I'd like a pint of lager, please, and a pack of..." What does he say there? Does he say a pack of KPs? Or a pack of flakies? Or a pack of plain cheese? I can never work it out. Let's bimble.
It just proves to me how it's meant to feel. We have motive, we have the time. We were meant to lead extraordinary lives. It changed with time. You still know me. We just keep facing back to the way things were before. It should plainly show what we're meant to.
This is the Holy Trinity Church here in Runcorn. It was built in 1838 and it was designed by a local lad by the name of Joseph Hartley. I can't find out much information about him, but I've got a sneaking suspicion that he might have designed the old police station here in Runcorn Old Town. If you know different, comment below. The Holy Trinity Church here in Runcorn is what you call a Commissioner's Church, or a Million Church, or a Waterloo Church. It was built using funds from the Church Building Act of 1818 and 1824. Basically, we'd just beat Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo, and we were all feeling very smug and very proud of ourselves. So the government put £1 million aside, that's about £70 million in today's money, and they decided they were going to build some churches for the expanding population and all these expanding industrial areas like Runcorn. By 1838 there wasn't much money left in that fund, so two local brothers had to top up the rest. That would be John and Thomas Johnson. They owned a soap works at the banks of the Bridgewater Canal. They inherited it from their father, John Johnson Sr. It went from strength to strength. They started making resin and distilling turpentine and making standard cordage. I think that's string to me and you. They owned shares in the St Helens and Runcorn Gap Railway, and they opened a coal mine in St Helens. They owned a shipyard here in Runcorn, and they actually became directors of the Runcorn Gas Company. It was all going very well, up until they got a little bit greedy. They decided that they could make money by running supplies to the Confederate Army over in America during the Civil War, through the Union blockades. The first time they tried it, it was very successful. They got the supplies through and they earned £70,000. That's about £7.2 million in today's money. So of course they were going to try it again, this time with more ships and more supplies. But the second time, it didn't work out for them. The ships got caught up in a battle by the port of Charlestown in South Carolina, and they were all destroyed. The brothers couldn't weather the loss, so they had to sell most of their businesses and all of the fancy houses. Some of those businesses were bought by a local lad who we'll talk about later, and it could be said that it was his fault that they were running supplies to the Confederate Army, but I'll let you decide that. First, we've got to visit another church. Let's bimble.
We have the time. We were meant to lead extraordinary lives. Edged over lines. Days keep moving, but time just keeps falling back to the way things were before.
This is All Saints Church, and it's possibly the first church that was built here in Runcorn. Obviously, not this building behind me, that was built much later. The first church to be built on this site was thought to be built by Ethelfleda, the Lady of the Mercians, Queen of Mercia, the eldest daughter of Alfred the Great, King of the West Saxons. She was the Queen of Mercia between 911 and 918. In fact, she stopped being queen on the 12th of June 918. I think that's when she died. In case you haven't heard me go on about Mercia and Northumbria before, England used to be split into two. The north part was Northumbria, that had its separate kings and queens, and the southern part was Mercia, and they had their own kings and queens too. They used to fight a lot and they didn't really get on. The border between the two kingdoms would have been the River Mersey here in the west, and over in the east it would have been the River Humber. In Sheffield it was the River Sheath, and in Manchester it's the Nico Ditch. Anything south of the River Mersey is Mercia. That's where I'm from. I'm from Latchford in Warrington, and that's south of the River Mersey, so I would have been with Ethelfleda, shouting the odds over the river to all the Northumbrians. The original church that Ethelfleda would have built would have been wooden, with a thatched roof. Apparently in 1250 they built a proper church. That's according to a local historian by the name of H.F. Starkey. In 1846 they knocked down that church and built this massive one behind me to house all those new people brought to Runcorn by all the industry in the area. This church was designed by a gentleman named Anthony Salvin. He was from County Durham, and he first studied under a gentleman named Sir John Nash. Sir John Nash did the original designs for Trafalgar Square before Sir Charles Barry came in and redid the whole lot. Anthony Salvin was employed by Prince Albert, that's Queen Victoria's husband, to do some work to Windsor Castle. He fitted him some lovely sash windows. Apparently it looked gorgeous. He also restored Warwick Castle and Trinity College, Cambridge. So that's All Saints Church. Also very handy for Frailer's guitar shop, in case you're wondering what I want for Christmas. That's Bimble. And so we reached Journey's End, at least for you lot. I've still got a ride home. I think I shall take part of the Woolly Back Loop. We've reached Wig Island. It's not really an island. It's a man-made peninsula. When they dug the Manchester Ship Canal, they formed this little island in between that and the River Mersey. And if that wasn't enough, having the Manchester Ship Canal on one side and the River Mersey on the other, they've got old sections of the Old Quay Canal, aka the Runcorn-Latchford Canal, aka the Black Bear Canal, aka the artist formerly known as Canal. It's a bimbler's paradise. Wig Island gets its name from a man that used to own a chemical works here, the Old Quay Chemical Works, hence the name of the canal. Before he opened the chemical works, he used to work in the offices of John and Thomas Johnson. Do you remember? The soap makers from the banks of the Bridgewater Canal. He worked as their export agent to America. And Charles Wig's brother, George Wig, worked as the financial agent to the Confederate government. That could explain a few things, couldn't it? Why they were exporting goods to the Confederate Army through the Union blockades. lest we forget why they started the American Civil War. It was all about abolishing slavery and the financial implications of that, and to a lesser extent, the moral implications. I don't think Charles Wig and George Wig and John and Thomas Johnson had many scruples about that kind of thing. But Charles Wig certainly came out of it better than the Johnson brothers. He ended up buying some of their businesses, and I think that's where he got the money to open his own chemical works here in Runcorn. Charles Wig opened his chemical works here in 1865, and they made bleach powder and ferric oxide. By 1875, they were exporting 70,000 tonnes of chemicals every year. In 1890, they were bought out by United Alkali Works, and in 1946, that was all bought by ICI. They used to make sulfuric acid here. That was up until 1960, when it was left derelict. In 2002, they redeveloped it to be a nature reserve, a place to walk your dog and take the kids on a Sunday afternoon and look at the stunning vistas. It's quite lovely, although I wouldn't eat the blackberries.